Hey everybody, this is DJ.
And Chris.
Welcome to the Lot1 Podcast. On today's episode, we talk with Erica Chan about winning an Emmy, film school, first AC work, and the FreeMe app. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to the show today. We have Erica Chan on, who is a first AC, who is in the local 600, which is IATSE, and also an app developer for FreeMe. Thanks for coming on today. For the people who don't know who you are, can you kind of give us a bit of a backstory?
I feel like most people have a story of like, I've watched this movie and then that's when I knew. I don't think I really ever had that. I think in high school, I started editing and broadcasting. And then when I went to college, looking at the list of majors, nothing was really that interesting to me. And I began double major in both dance and film. And then I ended up minoring in dance because I ended up falling in love with the world of film. And so after that, I went to college for film. Then I got my master's for film. And then I came out here for film. So it hasn't really been anything else.
When you were taking those classes, like what made you make the switch over?
I didn't really want to do the history classes for dance. I just was doing it for fun. And then for film, what actually made me fall in love was when I took this class called, it was an introduction to film, or it was called Language of Film. And it was talking about, we would watch movies and we'd start deciphering of them with what the close-up does or what a low angle does or a high angle or like how sound can play into the story. And I thought it was just really fun. It was like all these secrets that you don't really know about unless you look. And I really like that.
So you went from Vegas, very different climate than Florida for sure. And then you came all the way to LA. And then so when you first got to LA, what was sort of like, did you have an idea of like what you wanted to do?
When I went to Florida State, they require you to go through all the different job positions. I had to be electric, I had to grip, I had to first AD, produce, production design. I had to do everything. By the end of the 2 years, I worked on about 55 different short films.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, but I don't know. The first year, it was like a 3-minute short. So they do it like gradually bigger. So it was like 3-minute short, 6-minute short, and then 15-minute, like your thesis. So by the time I came out here, I knew that there are a couple of things that I felt like were my strengths, which was camera, being in the camera department. And I was also pretty decent at producing, but I didn't like producing. So when I came out here, I reached out to a lot of Florida State alumni. There's a lot of us out here, and the network is really tight-knit. So after I would meet people up for coffee meetings, and then a week later, I was already booked on jobs. So because of the network from Florida State, I was working. Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you came here and you had these meetings, what type of film was it that you were doing?
At the time, it was new media, like things that were considered new media.
Would you recommend somebody going to film school?
I really think it depends on the person, because if somebody is wanting to just go out there and do it, there's no wrong way to do it. It really depends on what you want. For me, when I graduated from undergrad, I only directed a couple of short films and I've edited. So those are my only 2 skill sets. Thinking about moving to LA, I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel like I knew enough. I knew I was going to struggle a lot if I decided to go out to LA immediately. So that's why I decided to look at film schools, and I fell in love with Florida State's program. And that's why I went there, because I felt like I could learn so much. And I guess if you can't afford it, it is expensive, but that's another thing to consider too. But at the same time, I feel like there's this idea about money, about student loans and how expensive it could be. But there's also like student loan forgiveness. And even though they talk about, forgiving like a big chunk of it, there are forgiveness programs and there are payment programs to pay it back. So it's not like impossible to do for people who don't have money. Like my parents don't have money. They didn't pay for any of it,
I feel like we get that a lot, the same answer of like, it just depends on the person, which it does. It totally does. And I feel like that's for a lot of industries that are like ours, where it's like you can learn on set versus in the classroom. It doesn't really make a difference. But I think that the like for me, in my experience, is it gives you the opportunity to make mistakes in a safe environment that's not going to cost you a blacklisting or like you're never going to get hired by this, because you're in school, right? You're there to learn. So as long as the school promotes that everyone's there to learn and mistakes are okay, like that is super beneficial. And then I also think it's super cool that you always hear, when I graduated from my college, they always talked about, oh, we want to increase the value of your degree by increasing the value of the school, right? And you don't really hear that relate too much to the film industry unless you go to like the big schools like USC or UCLA or AFI or Chapman. Like those schools have such prestige in the film industry. I don't know anything about the Florida schools, but it's like really interesting that like you are exactly that example of like you went to college, you knocked on the doors of that network that you created because you went to college and because you learned, and it's paid off tremendously. So that's like crazy. The Lot1 Podcast is brought to you by the Tourist Hat Coffee Company. You know what keeps me running on those long film sets, Stagey?
What's that, Chris?
Coffee. And you know what's the worst thing ever?
A swift kick in the pants.
No, bad coffee. So that's why I choose Tourist Hat Coffee Company's high quality coffee beans. Their artisan roasted single origin coffee and handcrafted blends are so much better than those stale stuff you get from those other brands.
Yeah, those things are bad.
Tourist Hat Coffee Company's coffee is artisan roasted, micro roasted, single origin, and their small batch roaster that handcrafts their blends to maximize peak freshness upon delivery. Family owned and operated. What more could you ask for from a coffee company, Deji?
I literally can't think of anything else.
If you're still not sold, a portion of each purchase goes towards contributing to some of their favorite nonprofit organizations, such as Animation Dance Community, Seeds of Hope International, and Beautiful Gate Orphanage.
These guys are good.
Make Tourist Hat Coffee Company your new go-to quality coffee choice with our exclusive offer for you, the Lot1 Podcast listener.
Oh, listen up, guys.
First-time customers can use the code Lot1BOGO at checkout to receive one free bag of coffee when you buy two. That's right, Deji, a buy two, get one free.
Whoa.
So head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com and use promo code Lot1BOGO at checkout. Again, that is LOT1 BOGO at checkout. Whether you work in the film industry or not and want a delicious cup of coffee, this is the perfect time to stock up on your favorite blends of coffee or try something new. I know I'll be brewing Tourist Hat on my sets moving forward, Deji. Again, that's promo code Lot1 BOGO, LOT1 BOGO at checkout to claim your buy two, get one free. Terms and conditions apply. Tourist Hat, coffee that fuels your adventure.
I would say the biggest benefit to going to film school is the network, because you are struggling together and it's impossible to not make friends in that kind of environment and for you to grow together when you guys go out into the industry. So I would say that's the biggest benefit of going to film school, and Florida State specifically, because our class sizes is 30 every year, 30 students. It's no more than that. So it makes you really, really close.
Yeah.
And I think another benefit with working with such a small group of people that like you're going to end up having people who you don't get along with, but you have to work with them for 2 years. So I feel like those 2 years were the most difficult 2 years of my life. I wouldn't do it again. And I really appreciate my time there. Yeah. But everything out here is so much easier. After going to film school, like I can handle anything out here now.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That's awesome. When you were in film school, what made you sort of gravitate towards camera?
So Zach, my husband, what he would like to say is that we don't really pick the jobs choose us. And I mean, there's a reason why there's a stereotype. In a way, I guess there's a reason why like there's all these stereotypes with like grips and electric and camera assistants, right? Like, I guess if I'm going to generalize, I feel like I'm analytical, I'm detailed, I'm organized, which is what a camera assistant should be. And so that's, I excel at those things. So I gravitate towards that. So.
Okay. So you feel like it fit your your natural tendencies on set.
Yeah, definitely.
I always think about when a new person is sort of like looking to figure out what they want to do in the film industry, like there are so many different types of roles, and like you said, there's like a bunch of archetypes, so you can you think about a person in the art department as being, creative, and like, sometimes they're showing up with like paint on their clothes and stuff like that, just
Don't
because
mind getting
that's
messy.
Yeah.
exactly. But they're like, a free spirit. And yeah, like you said, like people in the camera department are, organized and detail oriented, and so I think it's interesting if you think about it from that perspective.
This industry can break you. It's long hours. There's a lot of a-holes around there. You got like it's very exhausting. So you really have to like what you're doing. Otherwise you're just going to have a terrible time. And that's why so many people don't make it, is because they're like, oh, I want to be a director. And then because everyone wants to be a director, they get into it and they go, wow, this is not what I think it is. And then they just never go into film ever again. And it's like, well, maybe you just didn't find what it is you were meant to be doing in film.
Yeah, it gets hard. I feel like you really need to have the mentality that you're here for the long run, and you're not, it's not going to be easy, and you're willing to, experience those hard times. I think those people are the ones that will go the furthest.
So tell us about your Student Emmy.
Well, I won a Student Emmy in 2016. It was for a short film called IATSE and the Frog Prince, and I was the producer on it. So I was pretty good at producing, and I don't like to do it because I feel like you have to deal with like a lot of people and logistics, and sometimes it's just like, I'm a really compassionate person and I care a lot, and so like when I have to like be in those situations, it's really frustrating for me, I guess. Yeah, so I produced a short film, and we submitted it. I actually didn't think too much about it and how big it was or whatever, but I didn't even know. Like, I just told my director, Ying Shang, she lives in China now. I was like, we got into the Emmys. Like, I didn't think it was like anything big or anything.
Yeah.
And then she started like screaming on the phone, and then I started screaming because she was screaming, and it was really exciting. And then even when we got to the, it was, I don't know why I didn't know it was so big. Because when we got there, there's like a whole dinner, and there's all these like celebrities like announcing everyone and all the winners. And they had given us like a rehearsal where they told us, like, if you're third or second place, you're going to have to go this way. But if you're first place, you get like 20 seconds on the stage, right? And so like they're announcing, like it was just like the Oscars where they're like, this short film, and they play a clip, or this short film and they play a clip. It was really awesome. But as they were doing the announcements, I was like, God, where do I go if I'm second or third? Where do I go? I don't know where to go. And I'm like trying to think about it. And then they announce my name in the short film. And then I was just like in shock because I was just so focused on where else I was supposed to go.
Yeah.
And, we walk up, and it was awesome. It was really great. It was a really cool moment. Fred Savage gave us our award.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow. That's cool. That's really
So
cool.
you're an Emmy award winning producer, and you chose camera department.
Producer.
She's like, that broke me. That was it. I'm done. Can't do it again. That's funny. What an experience, though. That's so cool.
Can you tell us a bit about that experience and like the process of making the short film?
That was like really difficult. So to explain how the school works, we kind of have to like, in a way, like debate and negotiate when we want to shoot our thesis. And we have to like argue with each other about when we want our slots. And so the best time to have slots is in the summertime where everything's green, especially if you have outdoor stuff. And so my director, Ying Shang, she's very sweet, and she's like a fighter inside, but not like a in your face kind of fighter. And it was just like difficult to get like a summer slot because everyone was, the more aggressive personalities were taking the summer slots and like arguing with why they deserved it more. So we ended up with a February slot where it's still very cold. And so the story of IATSE and the Frog Prince is about this little girl who believes her frog is going to turn into a prince, right? And everyone's making fun of her. And she's like, it's more than just a story. And they're like, no, it's not. Your frog is not going to turn into a dumb prince. And so she carries this little frog with her everywhere. And these three boys bully her. And they're like, well, if you prove it, put him into the lake and we'll see if he turns into a prince. And so they travel through the forest and they run into these things where like the bees attack them. They're like running away from things, and etc. And so they finally get to the lake, and they're waiting for the moment, and she releases the frog into the lake, and of course he doesn't come back, and she ends up with the bully says, I told you so, it wasn't going to become a prince, and they get into a fight, and then they all leave her, and she's like crying in the lake. It's very cold at this time. this is why it was so difficult. But so she's crying in the lake, and then all of a sudden we hear some splashing, and we look over there, and there's all this like magical music. And then all of a sudden, one of the boys from the group pops up and has the frog, and it's like, I found him. And he's like listening in the water. And then so it's like, and she's like, I told you, it's not just a story, And so it's a really, really cute story. Yeah, it's very cute.
That's awesome.
We did this in February, and it was like, the leaves are yellow, everything is like not nice looking, and it's freezing in the water, and like the kids had to go in there, and as producer, I'm stressing out because I'm worried about the kids, and I'm worried about the kids' moms, so it was a lot.
It sounded like a really good, a really cool story, and it seems like it paid off. I mean, I feel like that's what filmmaking is, do these hard things, and then you get to see the fruits of your labor, like on screen, and like,
Yeah, it was a great experience.
But remember, that broke her, and then she never produced again.
That's right.
Now she's in
the that's right.
department.
So, okay. Yeah. Let's.
I'd be open to it if I really.
Greetings, film enthusiasts. It's Christopher from the Lot1 Podcast. Ready for an exclusive pass to our cinematic world? Join our Patreon page for early access, behind the scenes content, and a community of fellow film pros and enthusiasts. Your support keeps the reels turning. Head to patreon.com/the Lot1 Podcast, and let's make movie magic together. Thanks for being a part of the Lot1 Podcast family. What specifically, as an AC, other than like the detailed work and stuff, is like, what draws you to it? Because I know what draws me to wanting to be in camera department. Is there like something very specific about it that you just love doing, and every time you're on the set, that's the thing you love doing? Or
I think I like being first AC because I'm the head of the department. So I think I'm good at delegating. And I also really enjoy pulling focus, and I think I'm good at that. I think it's a challenge, and I also see it sort of like a game. So it's kind of fun for me.
Do you feel like follow focusing is there's like a natural talent to it that some people you kind of need to know? I know you have like tools and stuff that make it easier, but I know that like intuition and just knowing and feeling, when do I need to do it? How fast do I need to, rack focus and stuff like that sometimes is a natural thing.
I do think there is a level of intuition. So I was on this robot job, and they didn't expect me to pull focus. So I didn't prep any of the gear. We didn't have any wireless anything, right? The DP had a nucleus on her.
What's a nucleus for people who are in the audience?
A nucleus is a wireless follow focus system. So it's I control like turning the gears on the lens, but wirelessly. I wasn't expected to pull focus. And there's a shot where they were pulling from like a logo, and like somebody was like a human was pulling the logo back, and the robot arm was pulling away, and it turned into a wide shot. So the problem when you do robot stuff with humans is that humans are variable. So unless you're going to do like robot on robot, then you can mark the focus. But if it's a human or robot, it's a little bit more difficult because the human's going to do it different every time. So even if you program it to be correct, it's not going to be right. So this is our first shot of the day. And so it's like maybe like an hour or two. And I was technically just like a button pusher. I was just like rolling and recording because they didn't have that. I was happy to do that. But then all of a sudden it wasn't working. And the clients were kind of getting upset. And everyone's like watching. And they're like, oh, we can't get it, and maybe like an hour passes. And this is like, I think the first time this company is working with this client. So it's very stressful. And they're like coming to me and they're like, Erica, is there anything you can do? We have like a nucleus. Can you just, so then I had to like rig like this battery plate for the nucleus to be powered. And it was like all weird looking. I didn't take a picture of it. And then I was embarrassed. and so we had the nucleus on there, and everyone's like just watching. And I just finished like a cup of coffee. So I was like jittery, and it was just very stressful. Yeah, I was wired. And everyone was looking, like art department was looking, client was looking, everyone was looking because it wasn't specifically at the focus. And so when I did it, it was like, I was like shaking so hard because I've never been in a position where people were like looking at that specifically. Like I tried to pull focus where I'm like hidden, you know,
Yeah.
and like nobody notices that I'm doing my job. But this one, everyone's like watching. And so like it took like 5 or 6 times before like I actually kind of got it. And like once was like maybe like 80%. And the director comes to me, he's like, how was that for you? How was that for you? And I was like, well, I think it was like 80%. And he's like, I'll take 80. I'll take 80. And like the client tent is like cheering. You can hear like art clapping from like behind the walls. And the first AD is like coming up to me and like giving me a fist bump. It's like, that was really good, really good. That was like my most like stressful focus pull like ever because everyone was watching.
Wow.
But to answer your question about intuition, so hopping onto this and not seeing like the way the robot was moving and the way the person was moving, I didn't even realize until this moment that I learned those things as I'm watching, because people move a certain way and then operators move a certain way, and you have to know both, you know? And also the lens breathes a different way too. So you have to like understand those things. And I didn't realize that I know those things until I hopped in and had to learn all those things like really quickly in this situation.
Yeah. So like some of the things that you do sort of on an ongoing basis, like gives you like this like sort of knowledge, like like written knowledge about how, like where the mark is, you know, on a person's face, or like where that like that depth of field plane is. And like you wouldn't have known that had you not gone through this process.
Yeah. I mean, you eventually learn after you work a lot with either one lens or one operator or one actor. Like you can see like when they talk, if they like to move back and forth, you know, or if one likes to stay still. It's interesting, but I only know that because from focus pulling.
Well, people don't think about that at all. And you have to be so detail oriented. So it's cool to hear you say it, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening who never think about that type of stuff, you know? Like there's a lot into that.
Do you feel like film has sort of like changed over the time that you've like been, you know, pulling focus and been a first AC, style wise? Because I actually heard this recently from somewhere that the focus depth is so like shallow that it's sometimes hard to like find it. But I feel like that's like a style choice from like the directors or the DPs. Like Challenges has like moments where like the depth of field is so shallow that there's like, you know, you can see like only part of a person's face, you know, like, and I feel like I've seen that more recently than I have like in the past like 10 years.
If we're considering like all the way from film, I don't think there were monitors for first ACs, right? So it was a little bit harder. I think you had to play it safer, especially because it was film, because film cost. And even if there was a feed, it's like, I don't know if you've ever worked with film and the feed that it comes out of it, but it's awful. It's really bad. Like it's staticky and you can't see anything. So you might as well just not even use the monitor. I think, yeah, maybe people are more wide open because you can do it now. But I also think that a lot of people have gotten, I don't know, I feel like people have gotten lazy because of digital, right? There was like all these like rules and stuff with film, and now we just roll as long as we want, and there's not really like care for the image, I guess, right? Because you could just do it again.
It's not as thought out as before, because you could just do
not
it
planned out. Like, yeah, it's like, oh, we'll just figure it out as we go. We'll go do it again. Like, oops, let's just do it again.
For those who don't know, maybe who are listening, how would you pull focus without seeing the image in front of you? How does one do that?
Well, it's a coordination from a couple of different departments, right? You would have to mark the ground so the actors hits that mark. And then you also have to measure out to where they land, so you know all the different distances. And then you just, like, I guess if the actor was 20 feet away and they walk towards the camera and they're 5 feet away, then you have to just like, that's another, I guess, an intuitive thing where to time it out to make sure when they hit that mark, you're landing on that 5 feet. So you don't need to use a monitor, but if you're going to be wide open, that might be a little bit more difficult. And again, actors lean forward or lean back sometimes. So that's also something.
Do you think that that's why we see in older films, a lot of times they'll still use shots that are super blurry? I was watching Friends the other day, and they'll just leave shots in the show that are just like completely blurry, like out of focus.
Like maybe they didn't get it and that was like their best take, maybe.
Or something, or like, you know what I mean? Like, or they
Yeah.
just didn't know because they thought they got it. And then when they put it into post, it was like, oh, well, that's it. That's the shot, you know?
I think that's possible.
Okay.
I think that's probably what they did.
How did you become a first AC?
So when I first came out here, my friend recommended me to a low budget feature. It was like a high school musical in a way. It was really fun. And the music was really good, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I actually hired somebody who was my second, and they were more experienced than I was. And so they actually helped me out when I did my first feature. Yeah. And then my second feature was that same summer. So I was working a lot my very first year. So my second feature was that summer, and I did a 5-week feature across the country. And I was a second AC and a loader. So this was on 60 millimeter. And so the DP had asked me to be the loader, and I didn't learn how to load until like a week before, but I just said yes to the job.
Yeah.
So I never loaded film before, but I just figured it out. I knew I would figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then right after that, I worked on another feature called The Endless. And that was first AC 4. And then from then on, I was just firsting a lot. And then eventually enough where I, joined the union, and that's pretty much what I do now.
Hey, aspiring filmmakers, get early access to interviews, listen to behind the scenes tea, and explore the after show magic only on our Patreon at patreon.com/the Lot1 Podcast. Let's get to sipping.
Like it sounds like you had the experience and you got first in, and then it's like they look at your resume and the work that you did and you're continued in as a first, but like what would be the traditional path?
I think that's a difficult thing to answer, because I don't think there's a traditional way anymore. Because I think you can do it in the sense where you join the union as a utility, and then you can, when you have a chance, bump up to second or bump up to first, and then next would be operator and then DP. But I think I kind of want to say it doesn't matter, because if I were today to tell you like I'm going to start DPing, and I tell everybody that I'm going to start DPing, you're going to start thinking that I'm going to be a DP. So it really is based on what you say more than what you think it should be,
Interesting. So is that your next step? Are you going to become a DP?
I don't think I do want to. I specialized in directing when I was in film school. So I would like to do that. But right now I'm focused more on the app. I feel like that's where my creative energy is. So I'm putting it towards that.
So first off, what is this app? The audience doesn't know. We know. But what is the app? And give us a little spiel on that thing right there.
The app is called FreeMe. It's a crew time card and job tracking app. And right now what it does is you can put in all your times throughout the day while you're on set on your phone instead of doing it in your notes app. And not only can you track your times and your jobs, but it also will calculate the tenths and quarters for you automatically, as well as export an invoice or time card. I feel like a lot of people have Excel sheets of their freelance gigs, and it's pretty much that Excel sheet, but in a nicer looking way, just on your phone.
What inspired you to make the app? Obviously, like you kind of just said it, the Excel sheets, but like, was there like a moment in time where you're like, this is dumb, I'm going to create an app?
Yeah, I was actually looking at the history of when I started this idea, and it was back in 2019. So I didn't really do anything until like last year, like create an LLC and start pursuing it. But in 2019, I had this Excel sheet, right? And my brother, he's an analyst. And so I had asked him, I wanted to know when my busiest months were so that I knew when I could like take breaks. And I also wanted to know who was hiring me for what rate, and who was hiring me like for a lot of days, but low rates, but who was hiring me for very high rates, but like not that often. So then I can also look at this. So there was all this like information, and I thought it would do really well in an app, So I did a lot of research, I think like around like 2022, by interviewing people and asking them what their pain points were on set. Like, what's the most annoying thing that you find doing, so that I could create something that people would want. A lot of people have like Excel sheets, and it's hard to keep track of stuff. Times is like an annoying thing. And I didn't realize until now that the app is out is that invoicing is actually really annoying to do. So I think that's one great benefit that it has right now.
I never thought about the analytics behind of when you're working the most, what's your average pay, because you're so right.
And who's
I mean,
paying
I've
you?
been doing, who's paying well, who's paying you, stuff like that. Because I've been doing freelance. I started in theater first for a really long time. And I've never thought about that. You know, you always be like, oh, you know, this is my day rate or this is my rate, and you have it set there. But if you can never look at the macro of it, the larger picture of how do you know to ever increase your prices? How do you know you're not you know what I mean? So like that's so cool that you're involving that into the app, because now you got me thinking like, man, why haven't I thought about this sooner, of like tracking, you know, when I got paid, who paid me, you know, because I'm sure I've missed something down the line or something, you know.
So right now it's just time tracking and job tracking, but I do want it to be something where it makes tax season easier. It makes like tracking your mileage easier, things like that. All the things that are like annoying about, you know, paperwork and administrative tasks for us, because we work from, you know, with so many different companies. But the analytics part is not in there quite yet, but, you know, as it grows, for sure.
I have another question about the app, because this has recently happened to me, especially with like the new AB5 laws, which, you know, we could go into. That's a whole thing. For those who don't know, it's a law here in California for freelancing. Long story. It's not the greatest for the film industry, but it's caused a lot of productions to use just a bunch of different types of apps that are, you know, like EP partners or you know, there's like 3 others that I've used in the last 6 months, and I've had to sign up for every single one, where they're like, okay, log on to here, fill out your timesheet, you know, and everything, you know, the pay's already figured out in there, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll payroll through that. Have you thought about that while you're creating this app, of like how that affects people wanting to use your app?
So I think the difference between my app versus payroll companies is this is strictly for you. So I feel like a lot of companies like that, those payroll companies, are all created for like it's top down, and I feel like FreeMe is created bottom up. So this is with the crew member in mind and what they want and what can make their lives easier on set. So it's not attached to any payroll company. So even if you're working for EP services and then like cast and crew and whatever days, it doesn't matter. Since it's not attached to any of those payroll companies, you can log in your times into FreeMe and then just transfer them over, you know, into the online portal. So it's not attached to any of it. It's for your own record keeping.
Beautiful. Yeah. I just used your app recently, actually,
Yeah.
on a set where I did that.
Nice.
And thank God I did, because when I went to go plug in everything, I went, when was lunch? Good thing I wrote it down in the app, and then like figured it out.
Yeah, that's always the question, right?
Yeah.
How long was lunch?
For sure, 100%. What are some of the hurdles that you sort of faced when you were designing this and building this out?
So I have offshore developers in India, and I think sometimes we have communication issues, and I have to explain a lot of things, and I think I have to over explain it to make sure that I'm communicating correctly, because we have a lot of rules. There's a lot. So there's like meal penalty, like there's grace. What happens if you call grace but you beat grace or go before grace? What happens if you go after grace? If there's NDB, you know, if there's I don't know, if we're on studio versus like on location, what are the meal penalties? They're different. So there's a lot of rules, and I have to explain all this. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up creating a massive Excel sheet with all the formulas in there so that they can just plug it in, and it would output everything that I needed it to be. So if it was quarters or tenths, like I did everything. So I have the app in Excel form, so it doesn't look that nice, but it was in order for them it was in order for them to see the use case scenarios. I also created like maybe about 90 use case scenarios, like just like the grace thing, you know, those are 3 different situations, right? So to make sure that it was outputting correctly and for them to know what it should be outputting. So that was like the best way for me to communicate with them. And yeah, I think that is like, but I guess like, I think that could be true for anything. Communication is difficult anywhere.
Did you have any sort of prior knowledge to, you know, like starting a business before you did this?
I had a business prior to this one. It was called Unemployment Gurus. I think that helped me in like learning like how to create the LLC, and otherwise I've never been in like the tech world. So I actually had to do like a lot of research. I had a friend who works in tech, but he like does like back end stuff, and so he gave me some points. I've read a lot. I've learned a lot. I feel like I have a lot more new vocabulary words that I never knew, like tech stack or like agile development. It's just weird. I've read a lot of things. I read a lot of things about what it takes to develop an app. And I've read a lot of things about the importance of design, like UI, UX designing. It's just a lot of reading. To be honest, I have like a lot more articles that I haven't even gotten to yet. So it's me just figuring things out as I go. Every day I feel overwhelmed because I don't feel like I'm doing everything I need to do.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know
it's
what?
a lot.
Though, as I see a theme here, you went from I'm super detailed in school to I'm going to produce because I'm super detail oriented, and then now went into AC because it's super detail oriented, and now it's I'm going to build this app because I'm super detail oriented. It's all flowing through, all for the benefit of yourself and the film industry, which I think is super cool. Super cool. Yeah. Do you ever like when you're on set? Just imagine you like doing your AC stuff, and you just like hey, like I got this app that I designed. It's for the
app
people.
On the side?
It's for the people by the people. Don't tell the producers to like track.
Well, every time I'm on set, yes, I do market it because I have to. Because it's like the best opportunity to do so. Like because I'm meeting new people, and I'm like, hey, I developed this thing. Like check it out. And if people like it, like the people who have adopted it, like really like it, but the people who haven't adopted it's fine. Like, I feel like I'm going to develop more features that makes it more appealing. So it's okay. I'm not really worried, but like the people who do adopt it, like really love it. And it's exciting when I can like talk to somebody. And you know, what's really great about it too, is when I talk to people in person, I get immediate feedback. So I make my pitch and I can tell whether they're into it or not into it, and I think that's beneficial to me, like both ways.
So we're out of time. So Chris, if you wouldn't mind giving Erica your question,
the
very
most important question,
serious question.
If you had one piece of advice to give someone who wanted to be in the camera department, first AC, whatever it is.
I kind of have like two that pop in my head. The first one I think is that if you're going to freelance, I think you have to embrace and accept that it's going to get hard, and there's going to be slow times, and there's going to be moments where you might look at Instagram and see that everyone's working and you're not working, and why does nobody want me? Is there something wrong with me? And I think it's important to know that's part of it, and that's just part of the process, and you just have to trust yourself and do the work and go out and hustle and network. And then the second piece of advice I would say is that everyone's always going to try to give you advice, and you're going to have to know yourself, and you're going to have to know what's best for you, because people will tell you what to do all the time. And you really have to just listen to like your inner self and decide what's best for you and what's going to make you most happy.
Yeah, that's super cool that you say that, because so much of the piece of advice that we get is like, obviously like learn from other people, but it's also like, there's not one way to make it in this industry. So if you just listen to yourself and follow yourself, just because this person over here is saying, don't do it this way, doesn't do it this way, doesn't mean that you can't do it that way. And I think that that's like the point that we're trying to make in this podcast, is there's so many different ways you can do it. So many different ways. So that's super cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on to the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you. It was awesome.
And for those people who want to find out more about FreeMe and about you, where can they find you?
The handles for all the socials is the FreeMe app, and the website is www.thefreemeapp.com.
Thanks so much for coming on today. And if you want to hear more with Erica, we're about to jump onto the after show. So make sure you head on over there for more industry goodness.
Bye.
Bye. And that's a wrap for today's Lot1 podcast. Huge thanks to our supporter, Tourist Hat Coffee Company. Remember to use the discount code Lot1BOGO for your exclusive buy two, get one free deal. Again, discount code is Lot1BOGO, LOT1BOGO at checkout for your exclusive deal. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you enjoyed that episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, and leave a review and share it with your family because they are great. And it also helps others find us. Big shout out to our producer, Mina Vazarian, and our editor, Carlos Luna. They are the stars here because they do really amazing work. If you're not a part of our exclusive Patreon community yet, head on over to patreon.com/the Lot1 Podcast for early access, bonus content like the after show, and more. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to our incredible Patreon supporters. Your backing keeps the Lot1 Podcast lights on. Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot1 Podcast. That's, again, LOT1 Podcast. For behind the scenes content and updates. We're now accepting listener mail, folks. You got questions for our guests? Drop us a line. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about Lot1 Productions and all we got going on, check us out at Lot1Productions.com. That's LOT1 Productions.com. Thank you again to Tourist Hat for being an awesome sponsor. Until next time, keep those creative fires burning. Dream big and remember, the filmmaking journey is a ride worth taking. See you next time.